All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Oh, let's try that again. You sounded kind of tired. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, that's a lot better. So this morning I have a really important question for you. Have you ever been scared before? Yeah? Yeah, a lot of people out there even were saying yes. I see a lot of heads going, yep. So I think if you were to ask anybody and everybody you ever meet if they've ever been scared before, the answer, if they're telling the truth, will be yes. Everybody's been scared before. I've been scared before. You've been scared before. Everybody's been scared before. Now, I want us to keep that in mind today as I'm going to recap our story that we just heard, our Bible story that we just heard, because it's a really crazy, cool story. So in our story today, Jesus and the disciples they just finished teaching a large group of people, and Jesus healed people and taught people, and they were all really tired from interacting with these large groups of people. And so when they were there, they decided, like, they're tired, they needed a break. And so they were also needed to head to their next destination, the next place that they were going to go to keep teaching and sharing all of this great news about God's love. And so Jesus tells the disciples to go on ahead without him. And Jesus goes off alone to pray. And so Jesus is recharging his batteries. He's praying to God. And the disciples hop in a boat. Now, do we use boats on land? No, where do we use boats? On water. On water, that's right. So the disciples are crossing this huge lake in this boat. And while they're in this boat, a big storm comes. So the disciples went on ahead of Jesus, and Jesus said, I'm going to catch up with you later. So the disciples are all alone in this boat. And then this big storm comes while they're on this lake. And this big storm makes the disciples really, really scared. Kind of like how we talked about how we've all been scared before. All of the disciples were in this boat, and they were scared because of how big this storm was. And so as they're scared, all of a sudden, Jesus catches up with them. But Jesus isn't catching up with them in a boat. How do you think Jesus caught up with them? An airplane? That's a good idea, but it wasn't an airplane. I don't think airplanes existed back then. But, nope, he didn't swim either. Jesus was walking on the water. In the midst of a big storm, in the middle of a big storm, the disciples are on this boat crossing this lake, and Jesus catches up with them by walking on the water. Can you walk on the water? No, I don't know anybody that can walk on the water. I don't know about you, but I don't know a single person that can walk on water. And so the disciples, some of the disciples, when they see this person walking on the water, they get even more scared because can people walk on water? No, they can't. So the disciples get even more scared, except for one of them. Peter recognizes that it's Jesus walking on the water towards him in the middle of this big storm, and Peter forgets all about the storm around him, and he focuses just on Jesus. And when he focuses just on Jesus, Jesus invites Peter out onto the water to walk on the water with Jesus. Now, Jesus walking on the water is one thing, but if Jesus asked another person, a disciple Peter, to walk on the water too, and what do you think Peter did? You don't know? Well, I'll tell you. Peter got out of the boat and started to walk on water too. Just like Jesus was, which is pretty cool because I can't walk on water. I don't think anybody can walk on water, but Jesus was walking on water, and then Peter started to walk on water too. And then, when Peter was walking on the water, he was focused on just Jesus. But then, as Peter's walking on the water, he remembers that there's a storm around him. And what do you think Peter starts to feel once he remembers that storm's there again? Yeah, he starts to feel scared again. And when he starts to feel scared, guess what Peter stops doing? Yeah, he stops walking on water, and he starts to sink. He starts to sink into the water. But then our story tells us that Jesus reaches out his hand and grabs Peter and pulls him up out of the water and out of his fear. And so Jesus helps Peter out of the water and back into the boat, and then the disciples eventually make it safely across to the other side with Jesus in the boat with them. And so in our story today, we got to hear about how the disciples were scared, how Jesus walked on water to meet them, how when Peter noticed Jesus, he forgot all about the storm and how scared he was and was able to walk on the water to meet Jesus too. And then, when he remembered that there was a storm, he got scared and started to sink. But then Jesus lifted him up, and then they made it safely to the other side of the lake. And that's what happened in the story. And that's a pretty cool thing to think about. Because in our story, it's all about how there are different parts of the story where the disciples are scared. We get scared too, right? But when Peter and the disciples were scared, who was there to help them feel better? God. God. Jesus was. That's right. So, and the same is true for us. When we're scared, anytime that you feel scared, who do you think you can turn to and know that you're never alone when you're feeling scared? Jesus. That's right. So even though we can't see God and Jesus like you can see me and I can see you, we know that Jesus and God are with us all the time. And even when we're scared and we might feel alone, kind of like the disciples did in our story today, we can know that God is always there and that God and Jesus are bigger than anything that can scare us. And even our feelings, God and Jesus are bigger than all of our feelings that we might feel. And so if we focus on Jesus instead of on the things that scare us in the world, we can do amazing things that we might not think are possible, kind of like when Peter walked on water. So even though it's hard, today our good news is that if we remember that God and Jesus are with us, even when we're scared or angry or sad or even happy, that's a really good thing for us to remember. And with that, I'd like for you to please repeat after me in prayer and invite the congregation to join as well. Dear God, thank you for Jesus. And for always being there for us. Even when we are scared. Please help us to turn to you, especially when we're scared. We love you. Amen. All right, thanks for coming up. And remember that the next time you're scared, you're not alone and that God's with you.